My name is Armando Cuellar Jr., President of the Weslaco ISD Board of Trustees. This board workshop is being conducted pursuant to Governor Greg Abbott's suspension of certain open meeting law requirements to the extent necessary to allow for telephonic and video conference meetings in response to COVID-19. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. The board is meeting by the use of Google Meets and telephone transmission, which allows two-way communication for members of the public during public comments. A recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. The time now is 5:51 p.m. and I call this workshop to order. I will now take roll call. Mrs. Jackie Sustaita.
Here, present.
Dr. Jaime Rodriguez.
Here.
Coach Jesse Trevino.
Here.
Mr. Mark de los Santos.
Here.
And we still don't have Mr. Nieto, although he may be coming later.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Gonzalez acknowledged that he would not be attending.
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum, although it's not necessary for a workshop. So let's go on to item 2, public comments. No public comments. Item 3, discussion on forensic audit of district's finances and operations. Dr. Canales?
Board trustees, good evening. So this workshop, the purpose of it is for you as trustees to discuss goals and other logistical information regarding the forensic audit, Coach Cuellar. And so we do have, we did discuss this briefly at a board planning meeting with our school attorney, Mr. Sepulveda, President Cuellar, and Mr. Gonzalez. We just about the importance of having goals and targets and having this workshop to define those and get an idea with timelines as we move forward with the contract. So this discussion is for you, Board of Trustees. So it's open for discussion on goals.
Yes, so we want to.
So we can already discuss, topics and.
Let's start with Coach Trevino.
Goals as for the district right now, going into our, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, it's specifics regarding targets and goals for the forensic audits itself, to define the parameters of the forensic audit.
Okay. For me, I would like for us to the direction for us to go into the inventory of items. I would like I know there's a lot of items that have been, maybe misplaced or something. I think if we put a dollar amount of $5,000 on certain items that have been ordered, for the last 3 years, maybe go back as far as 3 years, 5 years. I don't know what you guys think, but that would be one of my areas of concern, and items that were inventoried. Do we still have them? So that's one for me.
I can go ahead. I'll go ahead and give my spiel. I mean, first, I think I've mentioned this with every other trustee and the superintendent and all the other staff, that with the forensic audit, I feel very strongly that this is going to be a very good investment. As a taxpayer, as a parent whose kids come to Weslaco ISD, I think it's going to be a very good investment. And I'm glad we're having this workshop so that we can all together come with, put together criteria and parameters for the company. And so that way we can get costs. But I think it's a very good investment because it's an independent external evaluation that's not political, it's not biased, and it'll give not only ourselves as the board, but also the public a clear picture of where our district stands. My whole entire goal with this is to see results come back negative. That's what I'm hoping for. But if there is discrepancies, they can be addressed. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with evaluating yourself or evaluating the organization and fixing small errors and gaps. And so that's why I picked certain criteria that I wanted to focus on. One, of course, was starting with organizational structure. That's something that I think I would like for them to review to see if it's effective, if it's adequate. The way our current structure is at the central office level, the district level, within the superintendent and the chain, and then the organizational chain below her, whether it's effective as far as communication, decision making, and whatnot. Is there lag times? Because that's what I've heard from the community as concerns, that sometimes when there's a decision that needs to be made at the lower level, that there's too many people that they have to go through for it to be effective, and sometimes these are time sensitive. So I would like that to be a review, because this company does have that capacity to evaluate that, and they have trained individuals that have that background. So organizational structure would be one, just to see, is it effective? Does it work properly? Or is there changes that need to be made? The district financial statements. In most cases, on average, we're a $200 million district. I know that the period of time that I would like to see is at the minimum 5 years. I'm looking at 18-19 school year and going back. And because if you look at that amount of money, that's almost $1 billion. And I think that we've seen the list of districts that have gone through this process, and some of these districts do it on a routine basis. It's something that they do periodically every 6 to 8 years, just to inform the community of where they stand and to show them that they've been operating appropriately. So the district financial statements, just looking at our local, state, federal dollars, okay, local, state, federal dollars, and all funding sources utilized for construction during that time period as well too. Looking to make sure that the procurement, our policies and guidelines were followed, the procurement process was followed, making sure that there is no conflicts of interest, and making sure that we've maximized our dollar. Yeah, the taxpayer dollar belongs to every single student. And so with every single purchase, with every single decision, we want to spend it like it's yours and make sure that you maximize it to a level where, we're going to see all this development, all these resources, all these buildings, all these repairs. And so that's why when I question certain things, like yesterday when we were questioning certain projects and whatnot, it's not to say that there's some underlying issue. It's just to make sure that we're questioning it. Is this the best price? Is this the best process? And are we maximizing the dollar for the taxpayer? So local, state, federal, and all funding sources utilized for construction, because in some cases, in the past years, it's not only been through bonds, but there's also been monies pulled from the general fund and whatnot. There's been tax notes. There's just different resources that have been used in the past. So that's why I'm wording it in that way. Another item that I'm looking at is background searches on vendors, making sure that we are equitable with everyone and that we're accessing the best resources, the best companies, and the best services out there, making sure that we don't have any improper relationships between companies themselves, making sure that we don't have any relationships between district employees and companies or even board members and companies. That's just something to review. And like I said, this is all based off of community concerns and also best practices, looking at previous forensic audits that other districts have implemented and utilized in their organization. The last one is policy and procedures for our staff. To say that hasn't been a red flag or questionable in some cases, to not say that, I would not be truthful. That's a community concern. Just to show the community we are utilizing all our policies, our procedures, all of our controls that are in place, all those are being utilized, all those are effective, all those are being utilized over every single year. And that Weslaco ISD, and I'll say this, I don't think it's appropriate for any district to have a negative stigma that you have to know somebody to get in, because what that does is that it's going to limit you from innovative, highly effective individuals from even bothering to apply. So one of the things and one of my missions if I was elected and if I was placed on this board, is to make sure that and I'm not saying it's not, but that the hiring process is equitable and fair for everyone out there that wants to apply, that wants to expand and succeed within this district, and to utilize their full potential and improve academics for our students. Because our competition that's out there, that's the way that they operate. They go for the most highly qualified and experienced individuals to fall into those places, and they're highly effective. And I'm not saying that we're not doing that now, because like I said, we looked at the academic data prior to COVID-19, and when I said it when I was running, and I'll say it again now that I'm a trustee, the data is there that we're highly effective academically, highly effective. We're surpassing people in the region, we're surpassing even the state figures. So, but I just want to make sure that those policy procedures and controls have been in place, the hiring process is in place, that we're giving department heads, the superintendent, department heads, and campus administration full reign to hire who they need to implement within their departments and their schools, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are held accountable. At the end of the day, they're the only ones that know their culture and climate. And so we want to make sure, I'm pretty sure, I'm not saying it's not in place, but I want to make sure that it is. And I think with the forensic audit, we can already establish that, and that'll be a clear report for the community as well, that that's already been taking place. And if it hasn't, then we can make the necessary adjustments. Review, and part of that also, that policy procedures and how we hire staff and whatnot, review job descriptions, qualifications, experiences. And I think those are main categories that I've seen and concerns that I've been receiving from the community as a whole. And so those are the topics that I'm interested in reviewing with the forensic audit. Thank you.
Mrs. Statham?
So my question is, because I'm looking at the agenda item and it says here, possible action to approve the engagement letter of the forensic audit. So are we here to talk about what we want on the forensic audit, or are we here to approve this?
Right now we're talking about identifying our criteria so we can put it together, our scope of work, right? That's what I think.
Okay, because is that something that we can just do personally with the auditors themselves and just talk to them about individually, personally, what we would want to do? Or is that something that we have to talk about right now? Yeah, basically, Mr. De Los Santos give a good summary of everything. So that's why I'm saying, it's a recap of what he said. So if we're here to approve, then I'm ready.
Dr. Rodriguez?
Mr. De Los Santos had a lot of good points, and at first when the forensic audit idea was brought up, not that I was against it, but, as a business owner, looking back and getting more information as to what a forensic audit is, as I got some more info on it, it's a good idea, and I think, I think WISD, I think we're a great district. I think we have a lot of good people working for our district with a lot of good intentions, and there's nothing wrong with bringing a neutral party to come in and give us, maybe better ideas or kind of tell us, hey, you know what, you're doing this way and maybe it'll work better this other way. Nothing wrong with getting fresh ideas and bringing in opinions from an outsider to allow us to get better, because as great of a district as I think we are, we can definitely get better, and there's always going to be room for improvement. So my only concern, is what we've kind of discussed a little bit already, is just setting the terms for this contract. I believe, do we have the Weaver firm on the call?
Yeah, this is Garrett Jordan. I'm here, and my colleague Travis Basner, I believe, is joined just via telephone. We're here to answer any questions you guys have.
Mr. Jordan, just a question. What has been your terms on these audits? Some of the shorter ones, some of the longer ones. What should we be looking at?
Well, from a timing perspective, it's really dependent on the scope of work, and that includes both the time frame, like one of the gentlemen earlier mentioned that he would like to go back 5 years, which is a fairly standard amount of time to go back in these situations. And then the other piece of it is the depth or the breadth of the different areas that you'd like for us to look at. Those are the normal things that impact from a timing perspective. Obviously, right now we're dealing with the pandemic that has thrown a wrinkle into just about everything. Now, between Google Meets and other types of virtual platforms, we've been really, really successful working with our clients, to stay on a good pace. But as you can imagine, just in this world that we live in now, there's some lag time with getting documents and information and that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit of an unknown. But it really comes down to how many things, what areas do you want us to look at, and we can stage it out. And it can take, from what I've heard so far, I mean, we're talking at least, 2 to 3 months. But that's, again, dependent on what we ultimately agree on. One thing that we can do is take the information that you've given us so far this evening, along with any additional information that you provide tonight. We can also have individual conversations with board members if they want to do that, and we can talk in more detail about what would everyone like to include in the scope. That's one option, and then we can present that scope to you and say, look, based on what we know now, here are all the areas that you'd like for us to look at, and have at that point a better sense of timing. It would be very difficult for anyone to sit here and digest all the information that you're giving us and then tell you how long it would take. I mean, we can do that, but it can't really happen in real time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a great idea. I think, we as board members have been approached by different community members, and at some point or another about, why do we do this way, or why is this being done a certain way? And if, each one of us can maybe relate that information to you, and I think we can narrow down, what we want the focus to be on, and go from there.
And this is Travis Kasner with Weaver. I don't know if my audio is working. Jared, can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming in.
What it sounds like to me is there's really 3 kind of scopes of work, and one being what I'll call a transactional review, which is really the items you described as the financial statements, and I'll lump that in with the background searches on vendors. But essentially, and that's very common in what we do, where we're essentially looking at all of the sources of funds that come into the district, the federal, local, and state funds, and then how those funds are used, whether it's to vendors, to construction projects, if there's credit cards that staff are using, if there's any, basically assess all that over the 5-year period, and then look at the vendors, and if there's any, run the vendor owners list against the employees and board members list, and look for any, affiliated vendors, and that's kind of, I would call one scope. And then I think the inventory, I think, would be included in there. And then the organizational structure is kind of a separate scope. And then the third would be the policies and procedures. But, those are kind of envision 3 kind of separate work plans that can all be, as Jared mentioned, staggered, or we can kind of work to move them all forward at the same time.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the, after the workshop, we had posted having a board meeting to approve. Now, if we approve anything tonight, are these things that you're bringing up right now that are going to be discussed already included in that contract that you all proposed?
Well, as of right now, the contract itself doesn't include a scope of work, because this is really the first time we've had a conversation about the different areas that you guys would like us to look at. The contract itself is really just the agreement. It includes our rates. It doesn't even include a term other than the ability for the board to, cancel the contract within I think it's a 30-day period. So the contract itself is really just to get us formally engaged so we can start doing work for you guys. I think given what we know now, the best thing to do would probably to do what we would call like a phase one or a scoping exercise, where we would, after we are engaged, we would spend some time framing out what the engagement might look like, potentially interviewing any of you individually if you would like to have the conversation with us to include certain items within the scope, and then come back to you guys at some point in the near future with a more formalized scope of work that we'll cover. And at that point, we can typically provide what I'll call a fee estimate range and a time estimate. And that way you can determine whether or not you want to approve that next step, if you will.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, so the thing to do would be to get a starting point, and once we agree to getting this thing started, are we going to be able to draw a line, as to when that timeline will be, or is this going to be an open-ended thing, or?
Well, the contract as it's written right now, I think it has like a 30-day termination period. I think I kind of go back to, you never know what you're going to find when you get into these things.
Yes, we understand that.
The nature of the work, and what I will say we would do, and what we normally do is we would have our kind of phase one would be this scoping exercise, and we would put a plan together that says, as Travis alluded to, right now we've heard about 3 different areas. We would identify all the different things that we would want to analyze or look at in there. We would have conversations with you guys to add to that. And then I think come back to you with, okay, we've done some initial work. Here's what the board collectively would like us to look at. We think that's going to take, again, 3 months, 4 months. It's just, those are just insert the number of months there. And we think we can do it between, X dollars and Y dollars based on what we know now. What we would then do is start executing that work plan. We would then have, I don't know if you meet as a board monthly, or if you have an audit committee that you would like us to report to, or some type of other committee more often. We could have, bi-weekly check-in meetings so you can understand where we are. To the extent we do identify something through our work that would require a change in scope, you will know about it at that next check-in meeting, if not sooner. If it impacts the budget that we have for the work, you'll know that at that point in time as well. And you can make a determination whether or not you want to, for us to look at that or not look at it. And so I think there's a way that we can design the process to where, we don't go away for, 4 months and all of a sudden we show back up and, here's the report. The only caveat I'll put on that is that we want to do what makes the most sense for the district and the board. And so I will defer somewhat to how your attorney wants this to work as well. So there's some consideration there that should be had, and potentially that's a discussion that you'd like to have with your attorney. And we can have a conversation with the attorney as well.
Okay.
Mr. Nieto just walked in. I don't know if he has something to.
Oh, we have Mr. Nieto, another trustee that just arrived. Let the record reflect that he got here at
About 10 minutes ago, maybe.
about 6:05,
Yeah.
give or take. Okay, Mr. Nieto.
I don't have any questions. I'm just listening, so continue.
Okay.
You're fine.
Okay.
Can we include council in this conversation?
Yes.
Coach, I would like to add something. I know a little while ago, you cut me off going there a little bit about the goals and so forth. But I, you know, Mr. Jordan, you've, and I know Mr. Los Santos broke it down, and I think you have a fair understanding right now of what we're looking for and a time frame of what we're looking for. And, you know, I don't want to continue to prolong this. I know I have talked about this previously here amongst us. I don't want to prolong this. I want to go ahead and move forward with this. And because obviously even the other gentleman there, he broke down and right now as he went over his categories, that's exactly what we're looking for. And, okay. You know, I think during the time as you guys start researching the information in our district, during that time, you know, we would like that open line of communication with you guys. And, you know, I don't want this to prolong and, hey, let's meet in 2 weeks and 3 weeks. I want to move forward with this and get you guys involved as soon as possible in our district. Like I mentioned, or I don't think, you know, you put the price on there and what it's going to be, and we've seen your work and we've seen what it could go up to, you know, by some of your other districts that you provided information there. So with all that being said, you know, I approve, or I want to make a motion to go ahead and.
We're not in the board meeting yet. So.
It'll be the next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is just a workshop.
Okay, so I'm about ready to get going and jump the gun.
But we certainly understand where
Okay.
Mr. Trevino is coming from, and I agree. You know, we want to move forward, but we just want to make sure that when we make this final decision, that we have an understanding of what we're going to be dealing with. So I'd like for council to have involvement if it's
Okay.
if it's in order.
And Coach Quad and Mr. Trevino mentioned he wants to start quickly, and that way any corrective action that has to occur will occur immediately.
Yes.
You know, he made a good point, you know, Mr. Jordan, about, you know, you speaking to the board members individually and they giving you a list also, you know, that's a good idea, you know. I mean, I don't see nothing wrong with the contract now that, you know, Mr. Dos Santos says, you know, basically directed you guys the way he wants the board to go. And I think the board wants him to go in that direction. You know, he's not speaking for himself. I'm sure he's speaking for the whole board. And I think, you know, you giving every opportunity to the board members to call you directly or you call them directly is a great idea at this point, you know. And, you know, I would tell the board, hey, let's go ahead. Looks good.
Great.
Mr. Boyer, I had two questions before, you know, anything else. With this ransomware attack that we had back in December, do you foresee any type of delays or anything on your part that might be stopping you from collecting any information you need?
If that question was directed to us, I think it was.
Yes, sorry, it was.
We have actually worked with another entity recently that also had a ransomware attack, and it didn't impact us in our work. You know, I don't think it will, but it's just one of the things that I can't give you a definitive answer, you know, sitting here today. We'll know pretty quickly if it does.
Excellent.
Okay. Another question, the second question I had, because a lot of constituents come to us and voice their concerns. Normally in the other audits that you do in other districts, do you usually have employees that are being audited or investigated on leave while you're doing this investigation, or does it matter if they're there or not? What do you recommend, or what do you usually see?
A lot of times when we do our investigations, the employee is already on leave or been terminated, and you know, our investigation is focused on if there's any criminal activity in addition to the grounds for termination is typically what we see, but that's not always the case, and sometimes we you know, may find something in report to the board and maybe make a recommendation for, if there's something that's grounds for termination or something like that.
I will say, and Travis is right. I mean, we've seen it a lot of different ways. If there is certain areas you would like us to look at, and maybe it involves current employees, that's something we should talk about individually. And we can design our work to ensure that we figure out the right way to further investigate.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. Came to me because you brought up the ransomware and some of the issues we've been having with servers, but I know I've read a lot of reports that you all have created for different districts, and you all have the capabilities to identify any type of data, any type of electronic data manipulation. Those, I know in some other previous reports, I know that you all have stated that you've noticed maybe certain things as far as certain system logins and questionable times or activity.
That is something that we can address. We can't always address it. It often depends on the settings, and we've got a team of IT folks that know this better than I do. So this is the elementary explanation that sometimes it depends on the settings within your IT system and the servers, whether or not it's logging certain information. We can tell pretty quickly after we get in there what information is available and give you some advice fairly quickly on how much digging we think it makes sense based on the information that's available. Those are typically referred to as artifacts within the system. And so that is something that we can include in the scope, at least initially.
I think that you had said, Dr. Canales, that all our files were as far as the business office, et cetera, were intact and fine, correct?
Yeah, so Mr. Martinez from the
Right,
servers.
Yeah.
Anything that was on, the way I understand it, Ms. Martinez, you can correct me, anything that was on a desktop on the computer, and the computer was found to, could have been lost. We have a few that could, but everything on the servers, is that the way you explained it, Ms. Martinez?
Okay. I think it was only one department, right? You said that there was some what was it, Alio? No, not Alio. What department was it? You said that something was lost? I think it was the...
Under the parent portal,
The application.
The application portal.
Staff application portal, right?
Yes, that portal.
Okay.
It was only for the staff to apply for exam and get recommended. That was,
Oh,
the applicant certificate of approval, we have
all that in place. Okay.
Only there were two computers, personal computers in the business office that were damaged by the attack. And the rest of the stuff, like Mr. Martinez said, all the other data that was not affected.
Last night, we did mention when the auditor was here, some cash disbursements that we talked about that they could not get back, those 11 cash disbursements that he said were lost. So there are also other files other than the applicant portal that have been lost,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, that was a list of disbursements.
But he was talking about checks that were cut, right, sir?
Yeah, no, the list of checks, right. They said that they have been approved in advance before we printed the checks. And we couldn't provide a copy because it was on the computer. So we did additional testing to make sure that those checks were run correctly, they were backup, paid to the proper person, so there was nothing wrong except the backup was done there. They mentioned it as a management letter, not as a finding. A recommendation, especially because of the cyber attack we had. Make sure you back up your files so you don't lose something else, basically.
When you all cut checks, do you all have like the requisition purchase order process where those documents are attached to that? There's
Yes.
requisition of purchase order,
Requisition
the checks
becomes
cut,
purchase order, right.
receipts.
Yes, there are some other items that were mentioned that when they do not go through the purchase order process, there's a request for payment.
Right.
So, and that one has documentation. And I get to review all those.
Oh.
That way, something's not wrong with it, we don't pay until we get it fixed. Make sure that items were received, services were provided, and we have information we need before we can process the payment.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. The time right now is 6:25, and that takes us to item 4, adjournment. This workshop is now adjourned. Now, our next item is the regular board meeting, or the special board meeting. Are we ready to start? Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you want us to stay on for this?
Yes.
Yes, sir. I just want to know what's going on. Okay. Good evening. My name is Armando Guerra Jr., President of the Weslaco ISD Board of Trustees. This special board meeting is being conducted pursuant to Governor Greg Abbott's suspension of certain open meeting law requirements to the extent necessary to allow for telephonic and video conference meetings in response to COVID-19. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. The board is meeting by the use of Google Meets and telephone transmission, which allows two-way communication for members of the public during public comment. A recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. The time now is 6:27, and I call this meeting to order. I'll now begin the roll call. Mr. Jackie Sustaita,
Present.
Dr. Jaime Rodriguez,
Present.
Coach Jesse Trevino,
Present.
Mr. Isidoro Nieto,
Present.
Mr. Mark de los Santos,
Present.
and myself, Armando Cuellar. Let the record reflect that we have a quorum of board members in attendance. Any public comments, item 3? No public comments. That takes us to item 4. Discussion and possible action for the board to approve the engagement letter dash contract for the forensic audit of the district's finances and operations. Dr. Canales?
Board of Trustees, this is about this, basically what we're asking you, board, is to consider the approval of the engagement letter contract with the certified public accounting CPA firm Weaver and Tidwell LLP to provide forensic audit services of the district's finances and operations, RFQ number 210120. So this is your discussion and possible action.
I go ahead and make a motion to approve
I
based,
second.
based on all the information that was provided during the workshop. And and going back as 5 years. And, after that, Mr. Jordan, I know you guys are still on, providing that we have that open line of communication and, see where this takes us. And so I make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Coach Jesse Trevino. Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
Ms. Sustaita? Second. And the motion is for the board to approve this engagement letter dash contract of the forensic audit of the district's finance and operations with the understanding that we will have a line of communication with board members as we go through the process of this audit. Is there any discussion? If none, we'll entertain the votes by signifying aye if you approve. Mrs. Sustaita?
Aye.
Dr. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Coach Trevino?
Aye.
Mr. Nieto?
Aye.
Mr. De Los Santos?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 5, adjournment.
So move.
This
Thank you very
meeting
much.
Thank you,
is now-
Mr. Jordan, and your team.
The time is 6:30.
Thank you.